October 24th, to order at 6 o'clock. And we will be, I guess we should call to order. Do we do a pledge to the flag now?
We don't have to do a pledge for a special meeting.
Okay, all right, and let's do a roll call.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Here.
Stransky?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Here.
Mayor Strong?
Here. We are going to go into a, are we going into a closed session?
No, it'll be an open discussion.
Somehow I thought it was. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. Well, then let's go on to,
Oh, yeah, I thought it was closed session.
No.
okay, so we're going into item 2 on this agenda for the special meeting. And it's a proposal to conduct auditing services for the wastewater treatment plant.
All right, if I may. So in 2015, we settled our lawsuit with Brook Trails, and one of the key areas of that dispute, that lawsuit, was the operational expenses. And our old agreement provided that based upon Brook Trails' percentage of flow entering our plant to our own flow entering our plant, they would pay their proportional share of the operating expenses. And the parties had disagreements about the accuracy of our meters and the legitimacy of our operating expenses. And finally, we saw the wisdom of entering into a settlement agreement calling for a flat fee. And so we had a flat fee of $22,000 a month, and that's what Brook Trails has been paying. That's what the parties, during the course of a trial, settled this case on. And the idea is that Brook Trails would pay that flat fee for a few years, and then the parties would jointly hire an auditing firm, a CPA auditing firm, to review the 3 years worth of flow records and operational expenses, and basically audit those and have the results of that auditing work. And that, what the parties were supposed to engage a firm by July 1, and we didn't meet that deadline. And the idea was that engage a firm by July 1, and then by the end of the year, get the results of that audit, and then use the results of that audit to negotiate what Brook Trails' monthly fee would be starting in July of 2019. So for a number of reasons, we were delinquent in getting a firm engaged, but now we have found a firm that both Mr. Neary and I have some confidence in. We went and spoke with them, the Vicente Brinker firm, and they have a proposal for you. And if you accept the proposal, they will do it in 2 phases. They'll do the first 2 years and get an auditing conclusion by the end of January. And then for the 3rd year of the 3-year period, that'll happen I believe in May. And so we'll have the results, and I think they need to wait for our own audit of our books to complete their work. And so they've got 2 phases covering the 3-year period, and they'd like to get going right away. They're available to start working on November 1. Chris Neary wrote to me this morning and said that last night Brook Trails approved it. And so if we approve it, we can get this firm engaged, and the cost to the city will be not more than $23,000. It'll be 50% of the $46,000 bill that this firm will charge. And I recommend that we do this because we're already kind of late on this, and they seem like a qualified firm, and we need to get going on this. And this will provide, this is very important because this will, the whole goal is that this will provide the factual information to help the parties negotiate a going forward rate. And that rate may or may not be $22,000 a month, but it'll be based upon Brook Trails' percentage of flow coming into the plant and the average operational expenses.
So any questions? Yes, Jerry?
Ron, do they have experience in this sort of?
Yes.
Sewage kind of?
Well, I don't know about sewage in particular, but municipal services, and yes, they do.
And then the end product would be done before this coming fiscal year. So for budget purposes, if we can negotiate an agreement based on that information going into next year's budget, then we have a better idea. Is that conceivable?
Right, so they should have a result for the first 2 years by the end of January. They'll provide us their conclusions. And then for year 3, they'll get us a report, I believe, in late May. And then we'll have a month or so to negotiate with Brook Trails over what the going forward rate will be.
Is year 3 the 17-18 fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay.
And do we, one last thing, and as part of all of this, do we have something, so let's say we got the figures, we go into negotiations. Is there some rules set into this agreement for those negotiations with that information, or could it become a free-for-all again?
Well, that's a good question, and what we have is a signed settlement agreement that ended the lawsuit, that was read into the record in court, that ended the lawsuit, and both parties, with the approval of their boards and city councils, signed off on a settlement agreement that said, we're gonna go through this process. We're gonna establish a flat rate of $22,000 for a period of time, and then the parties are gonna do this. They're gonna have a CPA auditing firm analyze those records, and based upon the results of that analysis, the parties will establish. So it's gonna require some good faith negotiating efforts on both sides. And the word I've heard several times from the council of the district is they want to get this out of the hands of the lawyers. They want to get this to the CPAs and let the parties then negotiate and not litigate over this. That I believe that the district wants to keep on with a flat fee monthly operational expense that is established on the basis of their percentage of flow. And I want, so there was some talk about just exactly what will the auditors look at, and Brook Trails came up with a list of their forensic accountant thought would be appropriate, and I want them to have confidence in the result. So when we met with this Vicente Brinker firm, I said, I've talked with my staff about this. We think we can produce this information that Brook Trails would like to see, and we don't have any objection with it. And so at the end of the day, I'm hoping we get a report that both entities have some confidence in.
Ron and then Mary?
Okay, so this agreement is an agreement, so we can't change it, obviously, but, as I'm reading through it, some things pop up.
You talking about the settlement agreement, Ron?
Yeah, the settlement agreement,
Okay.
right. And remember, this happened after months of really dramatic litigation, so I think everybody was kind of in the mood to just get it done, and get it aside. But this, the auditor is going to issue their report, and there could be some disagreements between us and Brook Trails about their conclusions. That would be part of our negotiations, I suppose. The good faith of what you had mentioned before, leaving
Right.
the lawyers out of it. And-
Yeah, for example, perhaps the auditor doesn't have complete confidence in some of the indirect costs that we're claiming, and we don't have sufficient documentation to back up some of the operational costs. Things like that could affect the final report.
Okay. Well, so this flat rate of $22,000 a month will continue until, I guess, June 30th, 2019, when hopefully we'll have, new rates set up.
Right.
I didn't notice in here, and I suppose it's not in there, there's not going to be a true-up period, is there? I mean, for example, if it turns out that their actual cost should be more than $22,000 or less than $22,000,
No retroactive.
we're not going to go back and true it up.
No. And the settlement agreement was pretty clear about that. It's gonna be $22,000 a month with no increase or offsets.
Well, the way I read that, it says with no adjustments for increases or decreases in said cost. And I took that to mean in this period where they're paying a flat rate,
Right.
if our operating costs increase or decrease, that's not going to change the 22,000. That's how I read that.
Right.
But that doesn't really exactly say what you just said.
Well, I think it did. I think it did. They're gonna pay $22,000 a month, even if we ultimately learn that they should have paid $23,000 a
Okay,
month.
all right, that's clear. And then there's one other thing, down under capacity, in paragraph B, it said the district shall have the exclusive right to dispose of up to 0.49 million gallons per day. And as I recall, during the issues that we had with them, it was this up to thing that was a sticking point. And they were claiming that they didn't use that much capacity and therefore they shouldn't pay for it.
Well-
So is this a set thing that they're going to pay for 0.49 million gallons a day of capacity or up to? And is that going to be negotiable?
Going forward.
You know, you are, what,
This is on
you're-
section 6,
Right.
paragraph B.
you know what, I really thought that the focus of this was on section 4, and that the engagement of the auditor, what the auditor is gonna do to look at the past flow records and past operational expenses, really is confined to the top half of the page and not.
Well, I agree, but you know as well as I do that what happened, and that some of these things weren't necessarily the focal point. And and there was this question about the capacity. In fact, they raised that point, saying, you know, we don't use this much. We don't want to pay for that much.
Well, I could just tell you that in the past 6 months, when I've been dealing with Brook Trails over the front burner issue of getting an auditor engaged, there's been no conversation about any of these
Okay.
other provisions, and so.
Well, I'm not going to be here when it hits the fan, but I just want to put it out there.
Okay.
Be ready.
All right.
Larry?
Two things. First of all, are we supposed to vote on this today?
Yes.
I got this maybe 10 minutes ago.
That's right. I was emailed it last night. Sorry, that's my fault.
And my next question is, where did they get their flow amount from Brook Trails? Where did Brook Trails say they got their flow amount?
There,
We're not voting on the end result. We're voting on hiring this
I
company.
understand that. I'm just saying, I'm asking a question. I was happy when you asked your questions.
we haven't produced anything to the auditors yet. We haven't engaged them, but if they are engaged, they're gonna wanna see flow records, and we'll have to produce them. And so.
They never have ever given us any flow from their charts to us.
Well, we have a meter that measures their flow entering the city.
We have something where they go together, but we do not have anything tied on to their flow chart, into their flow pipe, because they would never allow it.
Well,
That's gotta be a question that's asked, because they've never given us that.
all right.
They have a meter on their pipe alone, and then we have one where they come together to start it, but it's already intermingled with stuff up in that area. So we need to know their flow chart. So when you do this, I need you to check that out, because that's,
All right.
and if everybody else thinks that this is good and they've read it, I'll go along with it. You know, I don't know.
Well, the accuracy of the flow records is critical to the negotiation and trying to determine what their monthly fee will be. And so if we need to call upon Brook Trails to produce information concerning their flow, in addition to whatever information we have from our meters, then perhaps we will need to do that.
Well, they've given us a bad time about every flow chart that we've had, I mean, for years. But they've never given us from their pipe. And that's just something that we need to have.
Sabrina, did you have any?
I'll make the motion whenever it's ready.
I wanted to ask, if the goal or the expectation is that we'll negotiate a potentially revised up or down monthly rate for Brook Trails and have it be a flat rate regardless of whether the flows go more, in the future. What happens if we reduce our expenses in the future? For example, we put solar in and save a lot of money on utilities. Are they going to feel that they got gypped? Would the negotiate?
That's a great question, and another great question is how long should the going forward agreement be? The settlement agreement doesn't say how long it should be. I was thinking it ought to be 3 or 4 years. If we're going through this effort and paying out this cash, it shouldn't be for an annual deal. It ought to be for 3 to 5 years, I would think. And if we anticipate that we're going to be having a reduction in our operating expenses because of going solar or whatever, maybe that should, we ought to have some firm information upon that if we're, but the way the settlement agreement was written is that the going forward number is based really upon the past. And so, I'm sure that's something that may be part of a negotiation come the spring of 2019.
Well, I want them to be confident that we're playing straight with them and giving all the information that we have. And if we're successful in reducing our expenses, and meanwhile, we may also be adding more flow on our end, but that shouldn't affect their rate. But if we reduce expenses, it would. So that, I think, just needs to be an understanding that we put our cards on the table, we get their flow information accurately as
Right.
well, and that we negotiate in good faith for the going forward rate.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So I think that we have to get this auditing done so that we have firm, reliable, third-party information about
Right.
what's going on.
Do you want to open it up to the public before we entertain a
Yes,
motion?
okay, I'm opening up for any public comment on this item on the special agenda having to do with the hiring of an auditor on the Brook Trails settlement agreement. Does anyone wish to speak to us? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation, which is to authorize the entering into an agreement for this auditing services.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second the motion because I believe that the spirit of the item on the agenda is to show transparency and therefore the audit. So
I did have
seems
one
reasonable.
more comment, and that's just, obviously, there's some confusion up here as to the interpretation, and I know it goes without saying that you'll have our sewer staff available to the auditors, so that, I mean, if I were going to speak Greek, I'd need somebody to translate for me, and this, I guess we're speaking sewage and what it is up there, so that those auditors know what we're talking about on our end, and obviously that hopefully Brook Trails, they talk to Brook Trails so that when they come to those numbers, they understand everybody's side.
I have another question that goes back a couple of years. Our inflow amounts, our measuring devices for the inflow into the sewage treatment plant, which would be all of the inflow,
Did you read this?
was faulty, that there was some,
When did you get it?
engineering difficulties. And has that been corrected so that we will have accurate comparison of what the total flows and?
I think so, but I'm really not the right person to address that.
All right. I think that our engineering and our sewage treatment plant folks will take care of that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We should have a roll call vote on authorizing this contract.
Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mary, a vote on this motion?
Yes.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Yes. Mayor Strong?
Yes. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes before we convene a regular meeting. Yes. So you can do what you want for the next 10 minutes and we'll reconvene shortly. Good evening. I'm calling to order the regular city council meeting of October 24th at 6:30. And we will start with a pledge to the flag. Sabrina, would you like to do it?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll have a roll call.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Stransky.
Yes.
Orenstein.
Here.
Rodriguez.
present.
Nordstrom.
Here. All right. So we start with public communications, and we welcome participation in our meetings. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. This is items that are not on the agenda and that are within the jurisdiction of the city, and criticism of the council and staff and so forth is allowed, and no action is taken on items that come up, although we can decide if we want to recommend an action for a future agenda, but we can't take action on the ones that are brought up. So would anyone from the public like to address the city council on public communications? Barbara, come on up. And the little, you know the drill, but the little lights there tell you when your 3 minutes is up.
Yes, my name is Barbara Plaza. We know that for the last 4 years, we have been through a lot of really up and down, and I really want to apologize to the city council meeting. All of you have been great people. It takes a lot of courage to be apologetic for a lot of trauma, but it's not you guys' fault for what's been happening. But I do thank you for being on my council, and I appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Hey, Barbara.
On behalf of all of us.
We just have to take our own step and make it better for ourselves. Right on.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. Would anyone else like to address the council on items that are not on the agenda? Thank you. If you can state your name, that would be great.
Hey there, I'm Sonia Burgal. I work for Walk and Bike Mendocino, and we just wanted to share a statement. Thank you, City Council members, for your continued support for the Main Street corridor improvements and the inclusion of bike lanes. As you know, these kinds of improvements have been consistently found to benefit not just the physical health of our communities, but our economic health as well. A downtown needs to be a destination, a place people go to, not through. Slowing vehicle speeds induces people to stop and linger, and a number of studies have confirmed that projects like this lead to a decrease in vacancy rates, an increase in tax revenues, and improved sales for local businesses. Anytime we make significant changes, there will be many who loudly protest. In this case, the many public input meetings held over the last few years showed consistent and deep interest in making downtown Willits a better place for people to be, specifically with interest in improved infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians. When we better provide for the needs of bicyclists and pedestrians, we create streets that work better for all users, including drivers. Thanks again for your support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? And by the way, the microphone is for the benefit of Channel 3 and the video of the meeting, but it doesn't amplify in the room, so you have to speak up. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to raise it?
It's dangerous. I think it's probably okay.
All right. My name is Scott Ireland. I'm a longtime Willits resident, and I just wanted to thank the council for including bike lanes in town. It's been really difficult to go from one end of the town to the other. You can kind of go the back roads, but it's not always feeling safe. You're kind of in the danger of a car door opening, and the lanes are narrow. So this is really exciting that this is happening. I know there were some questions on the council as to the parking spots that were being given up, but I can't say that I don't really have a memory of those spaces that will be lost ever being occupied, at least not very often, the time that I've been here. I found a very interesting article on the internet, how bicycling infrastructure benefits non-bicyclists. I'd like to share that with the council. If I could, I'd make copies for all of you.
Good. You want to just give it to Kathy to distribute? Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay. So we are moving to our next agenda item, which is public matters. And the first one is a proclamation to the American Association of University Women, Willits Branch, and to the 2 students that they helped get special math and science training, which was very exciting. So I'm going to read the proclamation up here, and then we'll come over there and give them their copies. This is a proclamation of the Willits City Council recognizing the American Association of University Women, called AAUW, and Tokyo Jordan and Layla Britton. Am I pronouncing that right, everybody? Okay, good. Whereas the AAUW California chapter developed the Tech Trek program to introduce 7th grade girls to science, technology, engineering, and math, which is called STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, careers. And whereas for the past decade, the Willits branch of AAUW has sent 2 or more girls annually to the Tech Trek camp, a week-long residential camp held on the college campus. Whereas after being nominated by their science teachers, completing an application and an interview, and whereas Tokyo Jordan and Layla Britton were selected to attend and completed the 2018 Tech Trek summer program at Sonoma State University, and whereas their learning included topics covering mass and friction, anatomy, energy, air travel, and motion, and whereas the education of girls not only enhances their lives, but also benefits their loved ones and the whole community. Therefore, I, as mayor, on behalf of the city, do hereby proclaim our appreciation to the AAUW Willits branch and for their support of the tech program, and honor Tokyo Jordan and Layla Britton for participating in this program, thus pursuing their educational goals and accomplishments while also bettering our community. And I'd like to have them come forward, and if you want to say a few words about it, you would be very welcome to. Come on up to the podium here.
And if you want to get closer to take pictures, please feel free.
Yeah, if you want to, why don't we stand sort of facing everybody, and one of these is for you, Cynthia, for you, Layla, and then the AAW, which should come forward to the representative, Sherry M. Young. And thank you. Do you have any words you'd like to say about your experience? Make it relatively brief.
I just like to say thank you to the AU faculty members and Mayor Strong and everybody who's made this possible for me.
Great job, ladies.
The AAUW did host a kind of evening dinner, and we heard a lot more about some of the experiences that they had at the camp. It sounds like a really amazing educational opportunity for 7th grade young girls, and I'm so glad that AAUW does this. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is a presentation from Buxton, Inc. regarding economic development analytics. And yes, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor.
Oh,
Go ahead. No, I just want to introduce Lisa Hill-McKay is here from Buxton. Buxton is an economic development data analytics company, and I had worked with them in the past, and they have worked with many cities throughout the country, and they do some interesting things, and I thought it would be nice if the council were to sort of receive a presentation, and they offered to come up here at no charge to us to kind of tell us a little bit about the things that Buxton does and what is out there in terms of analytics.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me, all of you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council staff, also community. Again, I'm Lisa McKay. I'm Senior Vice President of a division called the Community ID Division for the Buxton Corporation. I've been with the company 13 years, and it's truly an honor to be here to share some of our California experiences. We work with about 350 client cities here in California, helping them to increase their sales tax base, better understand quality amenities for their resident population, for their daytime population, for their visitor population, and work with their existing businesses to retain those businesses as competition comes into their market. A little background about Buxton. We are the industry leader in what's called consumer analytics and site selection. Essentially what that means to you is we work with over 4,000 retail, restaurant, and hotel concepts. Many of those are unique concepts. Many of those are California regional concepts. Many of those are national concepts. We work with those clients to help them understand where their next location should be relative to their customer base. Understanding marketing decisions, so how do I message my customer through the right media channel? And then how do I understand merchandise intelligence? So how do I stock my shelves, and is the customer in Southern California brand loyal to different items than, say, the customer in Northern California, and sort of everything in between. So that's some of our work in the private sector. We are also in the healthcare industry. A lot of people don't know that about us. We work with over 350 healthcare systems, Florida hospitals, Texas Health Resources, Concentra. Many of our communities are also looking to add on to their healthcare provider, whether it be deploying limited resources, emergency care facility, physician groups, diagnostic clinics, or looking at full service certificate of need for a hospital. We have that experience. It's become very synergistic with the retail world. A lot of our communities that have empty big box retailers are infilling those with healthcare providers. And it is, again, they look at a lot of the same variables as retail concepts. So I just tell you that as sort of a side note. We are not just a retail company. We're in a lot of different areas of economic development. This is just a sampling of some of our communities across the nation. We have helped successfully land over 35 million square feet of retail space in the last 4.5 years. That equates to around $6 billion in increased annual sales tax among our client cities. Some of the cities that I work with close to you are Crescent City, Corning, Angels Camp, Yuba City, Napa, Tehachapi, all of El Dorado County, Placerville, Grass Valley, Sacramento, Dixon, Redding, Visalia. Actually, Visalia is not close to you, but those are just a few of the communities that we work with. I wrote down Visalia because we did a lot of downtown stuff for them, and they were not interested in national retailers. They were really looking at unique concepts. Palo Alto, Menlo Park, a lot of our client cities are looking for smaller footprint, very unique concepts. They're also looking to better understand how to be a partner to their existing concepts and how to strengthen those concepts from a marketing standpoint. So again, there's any number of things that you can do with analytic data, economic development, city services, understanding how to plan for your future, visitor and tourism, and your healthcare needs. Again, we are the largest tax generator for cities in North America. We've been recognized by Retail Traffic Magazine. We typically speak at the International City Managers Conference, which is where Stephanie and I were able to reconnect. Fast Company Magazine, Retail Traffic, and that's because we help grow business, whether it's real estate, marketing, merchandise intelligence, or operations. We also evaluated more sites than any other firm in the country last year. Out of the 50,000 sites evaluated, 7,500 of them became store locations. The reason I tell you that is retail has become very competitive today. Out of every one location they put on the ground, they're evaluating between 10 and 12 sites, and it's very information driven. It's very data driven. It's not necessarily we have a great relationship with our broker anymore. So it's certainly changed. Amazon's been a game changer for everyone. So they do look at a lot of opportunities. You're one of many, and it's more important than ever to have a data-driven approach to your proactive recruitment strategy. It's also important to think like a retailer. What I can tell you based on my work with over 4,000 retail and restaurant concepts, picking up the phone and saying my mayor would love to see Trader Joe's is not that compelling for Trader Joe's. So really being able to think like them, being able to say, what's my overhead versus my operating cost? Do I have the right type customer to warrant an overperforming Trader Joe's store? Being able to predict their sales volume, understanding what size store location would fit in your market. Those are all questions that they need to answer before they become significantly interested in you. And that's the type of analytic work that we do. So that again, you can recruit and retain businesses. The way that we get to some of those answers is by understanding the data sources, by understanding the customers in your market. So again, we're the largest purchaser of consumer spending habits in the nation. We're looking at credit card reporting tools. We analyze reward card data. We look at magazine subscriptions. We're assessing Experian. We're Experian's Western partner, so we're looking at Equifax files to assess financial stress indicators, debt to income ratio. Knowingly or not, we're constantly giving away this information about ourselves as a consumer, and we're the buyers of that information so that we can help our partners make strategic decisions. Unlike demographics, this information updates every 8 weeks. We're getting rolling real-time snapshots of what's occurring in your market, and it separates up to 7 people per household. So we're not limited by household. We're able to separate you from your spouse in terms of your consumer, so that we can understand who are value, who are your customers, where are they coming from, what is their overall value as it translates to an existing business or a business looking for a potential opportunity. We also start that process by understanding your market. Customers don't think in terms of your political boundaries, they think in terms of minutes to miles. How long is that going to take me to get there? So you are much bigger than your current political boundaries are reflecting. Your market trade area is much bigger. People have a tendency to drive further. So when we look at your market, we look at drive time methodology. We look at actual purchases, where they're occurring versus where that person lives or works. So that drive time methodology will assess your topographical issues. So it follows road networks. We help you to understand traffic counts. National retailers need visibility. Regional and unique opportunities, maybe not as much parking. But the reality is, San Diego's a client of mine. If I were to draw a radial ring around San Diego, half that would be in the water. So we do have to follow where people live and how far they're willing to drive to a specific amenity. Again, get beyond the limitations of your demographics. Your demographics are enforcing a negative perception that you are too small. We can get beyond that, and we have done so with many of our communities that are less than 10,000 in population. Also, your demographics, your age, sex, race, income, education will not tell me whether or not you're a Sprouts versus a Trader Joe's customer. So we're looking for psychographic data. We're looking for how you live your life, how you spend your money, and how you consume media. So think about these two gentlemen, although they're same age, ethnicity, both married, both have children, they're very different in terms of how they consume. One's Whole Foods, one's Walmart, one's one child, one's 3 child, one's Netflix, one's cable. Everything about them is different, although demographically they would appear similar. So we need to get to that level of understanding in terms of the customer base. It's up to 7,500 individual variables, again up to 7 people per household. So it's a very granular level of data on customers. I know it seems a very big brother. You're probably going to all pay with cash from now on, but but it really is what our providers, our retail providers, need to see in order to make a multi-million-dollar real estate decision. So once we know what Steve looks like, we're able to find other people that look just like them, and we can help that retailer assess whether or not there are enough people that look like Steve to warrant a Whole Foods location. So just think about that. This is how a retailer thinks, and this is the information that they need to see to make a speed to market decision about you. So again, taking your customer profile, marrying that with your drive time trade area, and then understanding your retail market conditions. So where's the competition around you? Are there potential cannibalization issues? So is there already a store in close proximity to you? They're not likely to put a second or third unless you've got enough of their right type customers. We're looking at things like, if it's a franchisee concept, is there a franchise person in the region willing and liquid enough to open another store? So all of those things sort of factor into this overall decision-making process. And then we sort of begin matching for you. So we have about 6,500 national, unique, and regional concepts in our proprietary database, so you're not limited to our 4,000, although it does help you tremendously if we're already working with them. But what we're looking for is a couple of filtering things. So number one, they have to be currently looking at locations in Northern California in the next 24 to 36 months. So we certainly want to look at those retailers that are focused on California already. We want to also look at players that already have store locations on the ground in a market similar to your market, and we look at how those store locations currently perform. So they have to be overperforming, They need to be already looking at expansion possibilities in the Northern California region. And then the most important thing is, do you have their lookalike customer? And do you have enough of that customer to warrant that store location? So again, if we're able to assess that, assess the competition, assess traffic, assess, all of those variables that a retailer is looking at, then we can say, this is the right fit for you, and we can begin that recruitment process. So we're looking at trade area visualization, we're looking at that snapshot of you, the site score, and their most comparable locations. So this would be a sample of a site score, and this is the same thing that we build for our retailers before they make a decision. This is just one of the pieces. But what this says is XYZ retailer, and that's specific to that retail concept. A grocery store has a tighter trade area than, say, Costco, which might look at 40 minutes in this market, which I know there's already one in Uki, but that trade area would be customized to the retailer. So that would be the suggested drive time of that particular retail concept. The area over to the side is your trade area snapshot, which says it's demographic variables, it's also population growth over the next 5 years. The gray list at the bottom is the number of stores that retailer currently has on the ground in a market similar to this market, and it shows how those stores are currently performing. So we're scoring this site based on accessibility, customer profile, demographic variables, area draw, traffic counts, competition, all of those things that I showed you. But what this says to the retailer, instead of just approaching them and saying, I have a site at 123 Main and a motivated seller, you're able to say, XYZ retailer, we know you're expanding to Northern California. We have a site at XYZ Main. We've got a motivated seller. Also, you have 15 store locations on the ground in a market that looks just like our market. Those stores overperform, and here's what we look like in 5 years. So here's your projected growth, and here's your projected overhead value over the next 5 years. Again, Scout is something that we built. It's proprietary to Buxton. It's your analytic portal. It links you in real time to our 250 different data sets. It's also cloud-based, so it's not a software install for your staff. If you have an internet connection, you can get onto Scout. You can run your own reports. You can be reactive to developers and brokers. You can also be very proactive in that we will help you with that outreach. If it is a Buxton client, we do a city-seeking retail platform. So our retail concepts will get your criteria, sort of what you're looking for, maybe regional and unique concepts only. They can query you, they can find your contact information, they can easily access you through our platform. So it's sort of like your website, your window to the world through Buxton. So that's a little about our proactive recruitment strategy. I want to just go over that we're not just interested in proactively recruiting, we're also interested in strengthening the local market. Certainly we want to encourage shop local. We want to help your existing retailers also be proactive in terms of their marketing strategy. We built a local store marketing tool mainly for our national retailers, but we have deployed this everywhere. This is an app on your phone. It would allow them to draw either a radial ring or use a drive time trade area around their store location. So it would essentially, this says there are 1,500 potential customers at a 10-minute drive time around this particular store, and this can be any store. It would look at the lookalike customers of that store location, so who their customers are within that location, where they are relative to that store, and it would help them to target market them. So I know this is hard to see, but identifying first how many lookalike customers are in that market, and then the execution of that would be they could send a social media, they could send it through Facebook, they could send a TripAdvisor to their phone. We're geolocating phones, and I'll talk a little bit about that through our visitor data. They could do a banner advertisement, they could do a direct mail piece, and it would send that to that customer via mail, or they could do an email append and send that customer an email saying, inviting them to the store, or some coupon, or some variance of that. So out of those 1,500 customers, they were able to reach 5,700, so that's about a 30% increase. So it does track progress. It looks at how many of those customers redeemed whatever that offer was. So that is very important to them. It helps them market directly. It also helps them understand, did that work? Did that not work? And then we do a propensity report. So we built a customer propensity report initially for Target. Now all of our national clients are using it. It basically looks at 32 major retail categories, 4,800 line items, and it's the consumer's propensity towards specific brands. So I'm a Nike customer. I bought 2 pairs of Nike tennis shoes this last year. I have a greater propensity to be Nike's customer. So it measures purchases over the last 12 months, and then it says this customer is more likely based on past purchases to do this again, so that they can mix their merchandise by store. So this puts the control in their hands. They can event market. If there's an event coming up, they can post something on Summer Food Festival. They can reach their customer that way. And that helps you to support your existing businesses through marketing efforts. And again, this is a very sophisticated tool. It's a tool that our national retailers are using, and that would be free tool to you as a partner of ours. So your roadmap to success would be to begin the partnership. We would assign a data and research person, an account manager. The account manager outreaches to the top 20 of your matches, so we help you contact those people firsthand. We also would cross-reference the attendee list with the match list, should you attend the regional ICSC Monterey or the national in May, and then build all of that marketing material that you need to be compelling to the retailer. So the last thing I want to go over is just the visitor profile. About 3 years ago, we were able to negotiate an exclusive agreement with a credit card reporting company. It is exclusive to Buxton, nobody else has it, and it allows us to append the psychographic data to transactional credit card data. That helps us that combined with the mobile device tracking, allows us to identify customers that don't live or work here, but that shop or dine here. So we would be able to capture who that visitor is. We would be able to help understand what they look like from a consumer propensity reporting, align those local businesses with your visitor, quantify the U.S. market for you, and target prospective visitors to invite them to come back. So again, demographic variables, attitudes and opinions, psychographics and lifestyles, online activity, and then channeling that engagement for you. So again, this is just that GPS tool. If you have a lot of people are doing mobile device tracking. It's sort of replacing the license plate capturing that's been going on since the 50s. But it does seem very big brother. The reality is most retailers have it, they're using it. And the value of you guys having the same level of information is you put yourself on a level playing field. So leveraging that data for spend distribution, understanding your recruitment efforts, understanding household level marketing, and being able to market those prospective visitors. Which has been very important to communities like Palm Springs. Palm Springs is a very affluent community. They are sort of smaller in terms of kind of that national retail piece. And they were struggling to recruit retail. We were able to assess their visitor data. 73% of their transactions were coming from outside their 2 zip codes. So without having that, they were not able to quantify to their existing businesses or their prospective businesses what that actually looked like. So we were able to quantify that spend. We were able to help them with hotel recruitment. We were able to help them with align their existing businesses, retail recruitment. Pasadena, no shortage of retail there. They use us to elevate their profile. They compete heavily in the Southern California market. They basically said, we're looking for unique retail only. We already have all the national retailers. We have many of the regional concepts. We want high-end unique, and we've been able to help them tremendously. Porterville, they had a negative perception of not the right income levels. They've been able to attract several new retail concepts as a direct result of our information. Selma, very small community, same thing. Their demographics were not reflecting the right perception of them. I have a lot of case studies. I don't necessarily have to send you all these. This was Livermore. They were looking at high-end concepts. They were looking at downtown opportunities only. And so we were able to work with them there. And again, I can send Stephanie a lot of case studies and a lot of references if you guys want to see those. I don't want to take up too much of your time on that, but that's available to you on our website, or I can send some of that to Stephanie. Again, look at your overall economic development strategy. What is your vision? Do you have an analytic partner to help you get there? And kind of executing on that overall vision, is it realistic? Can we validate it? And can we help you guys to increase your sales tax base? Questions?
Anybody? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that was interesting. The thought that ran through my mind, of course, was just how applicable this is to our town.
Sure.
And I'm sure when you drove into town a couple of hours ago, you noticed the population sign.
Uh-huh.
It's not those places.
No, I think you're more like some of the ones that I named.
So I'm curious about the philosophy. I mean, there's several things going on here. I mean, most of the presentation was focused on bringing in national companies.
Sure.
And there is a culture in this town not to do that.
Yeah. Not unlike most of my Northern California communities.
Yeah, and years ago, actually, we actually had an opportunity kind of to bring Costco in here.
Uh-huh.
They didn't want to come here,
Sure.
but when we talked about it, there was a lot of pushback about, people just did not want big box stores.
Yeah.
So I think the focus would have to be on the local small businesses.
Sure.
And probably the biggest box we have in town, I'm guessing, is Safeway.
Yeah.
And other than that, we have a ton of small entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if your program, if you have a program that can be used to help the small business owners, either the ones who are in business right now,
Sure.
or the ones or people who are planning or hoping to open a business, to identify what that business could be, what's needed in this community.
Sure. Yeah, I think if you were to talk to like San Mateo or Palo Alto or Cupertino or some of the communities that we've worked with, and some of these, further up north like Corning, Angels Camp, they would have fired me if I would have said Walmart. Absolutely, on the spot. So they were only looking for a very small footprint. Menlo Park only has X amount of available space anyway. So they're not looking for big box national retailers. They're looking for unique concepts, and they're also looking to strengthen their existing market. So fill the vacancies with either regional or unique type concepts. So California specific type concepts, or work with the existing businesses to help strengthen them and encourage local entrepreneurs.
Okay, but your philosophy is to identify, generally speaking, national corporations.
No, not true. No. We identify unique, national, and regional. So the logo board that has all the national, that's just because it has recognition. Because when you see that logo, you know what it is.
Yeah.
And you can tell the breadth and depth of the data that we have because that person, Costco is a client. They're a very savvy retailer. Trader Joe's is a client. So I posted that sort of NASCAR slide because you recognize those names. But we have a lot of those that are not recognizable.
Well, what I was getting at is an earlier point that I had made. Would you be able to focus on the existing or potential small business owners in this town and identify for them, let's call it the equivalent of bringing a major company in?
Sure.
That is, identify the type of businesses that are needed and that will succeed in this town.
Right.
Do you have that ability?
Yes. So before opening a business, so the first thing that we would look at is sort of that gap analysis, that leakage analysis, which helps us to assess where are the current dollars going, and if that potential location, whether it's national, regional, or unique, was in this market, is it sustainable? So you want to complement the existing market. You don't want to compete with yourselves. So if you're already capturing the market in that retail category, you don't necessarily need to open yet another one. So that's kind of the very first high-level step, is understanding, is there even a gap in our market for something like that? And then assessing sort of that private equity side. How is that zoned? Is that the right fit for you? Does it complement your vision? So really filtering through, whether it's unique or national, they all go through the same vetting process, which is, am I going to make enough money to be sustainable for at least the next 5 years? And all of that, we go through the same process, whether it's a small company or a large company. And that's looking at, do you have the right customers? Do you have the right current co-tenant mix of retail? How are your existing retailers doing? And does that need to be strengthened? And then sort of looking at things like, you know, is that part of your vision? Does that meet your standards?
Okay, I have one last
Sure.
comment/question. The key to your whole program is to identify the audience.
Right.
And as you know, as we all know, it's done through all kinds of, you know, credit card pickups and social media, things like that. I don't know if this community is unique, but it does have a kind of a penchant for privacy.
Sure.
And I'm just wondering how accurate your data gathering would be focused on this community.
It's pretty hard not to give away a lot of this information. I mean, it's nearly impossible, and you know, you would have to like not register your car, not have insurance, not live in a house, like not get mail. Yeah, I mean, it would be. And you might, you know, we're not going to capture 100% of the market.
Right.
What we're looking to capture is a significant enough sample set to drive strategic decisions. That's what we're looking for. We're not getting 100% of any data source because it simply isn't out there. But in order to drive a legitimate real estate decision, something that's going to cost, you know, whatever that investment might be, if we can validate that opportunity, it helps that unique business owner. It helps them from a financial standpoint, to validate through the lending process, to be able to validate, you know, sort of that overall business plan, and to say, is this a concept that will have any longevity, or is it something that maybe doesn't fit within our customer base, or maybe there's an oversaturation of that and I don't need to open another one.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, Jerry?
Kind of a couple parts question. You've answered some of what I was
Sure.
going to ask. So like for a restaurant in town, and I guess Stephanie probably told you we were recently bypassed. So anecdotally, I've talked to some businesses who say things didn't change. Other folks that say they did change, but, and using a restaurant, for example.
Okay.
Your analytics would be able to say to that specific, to that restaurant maybe, or maybe to that type of restaurant, that the average customer is coming from outside the area.
Sure.
And that they weren't passing through,
They're actually stopping, yeah.
they're stopping on a regular basis
Yeah.
versus somebody from Kansas driving through on the 101.
Yeah.
So that's one.
And maybe not every amenity fits the resident population, but if you have a significant visitor population, there is you know, having an eclectic mix is good.
And then we
Because
have
you attract lots of different type customers.
And then I guess we end up with some folks who, I've talked to some businesses, Costco recently came into Ukiah, and
Yeah.
you talk to probably more so the Ukiah businesses who now claim that it's taken some of their business.
Could be.
Whereas locally, I've asked some businesses, they
They're
say
like,
they
"Didn't affect us."
speculate it might or not.
Yeah.
I get that the majority of the folks, I mean, the folks older than me all pay with cash, but everybody younger takes out their card, and
Yeah.
that can be tracked, or.
Well,
they
Costco
shop
has a
online.
membership.
Yeah, so.
So even if you pay with cash.
So you would be able to capture some
Right.
of that, and then that would be available to the merchants, so they could tailor what they're doing, or
Yeah, I mean,
see the trend that would be available.
to really
for-
work with your existing businesses to say, you know, here are maybe they want to cater more to the visitor, you know, that's coming through, or they want to maybe market that customer so that they don't necessarily pass by. You know, anything that we can do to strengthen your local
Obviously,
businesses will
your
also make you more
experience with
attractive.
hotels is there too, so.
Correct. We work with Marriott, we work with lots of national brands. We also work with lots of unique boutique type hotels. They're really becoming much more popular because of the size, the scale, and you've got to have that private equity piece.
And I guess the last part is for businesses contemplating whether or not should they continue or not continue, their data might be able to say, hang in there another year, or.
Sure. Yeah, we could work with them. Do you have, did I ask you, Stephanie, do you guys have a pretty strong chamber?
Our
I mean,
chamber
'cause we
is
would wanna
somewhat
work-
in transition at this point.
Okay. Well, definitely that would be an avenue to push this out via the city's website, also push it out via the chamber website, or put together a local, like, business breakfast or something like that, and that would be very helpful in getting them together. We do a lot of that type work where we invite, you know, the local businesses to come to a breakfast or something before or after hours, obviously, and work with them individually.
Okay.
Other questions from?
So we haven't got to the part where we hear any kind of financial presentation about what it would cost the city for this, but from your presentation, what I gather that I see would be useful to us as city leaders is an opportunity to get this information so that we can have a very clear vision of how we want to see our city going forward in terms of economic development, from helping us to implement our ordinances to cityscape, our boundaries, what we want to look like in terms of what kind of businesses we want to attract. But working for helping the businesses themselves, I haven't seen a plan yet, of course, on financial side to that, but we do have West Company that's funded through the county, and those services are free to business owners, and I don't think all business owners use those services. So maybe by the council having a better economic vision, we might encourage that. But I would also be curious to see what it would cost the taxpayers if the city did engage in some kind of an agreement, and whether or not that would be beneficial.
And I'll submit a menu to Stephanie, and we haven't really gotten to that necessarily. This was sort of top to bottom an educational opportunity for you guys, but I will submit a formal proposal that will have itemized things on it, and you guys can pick and choose from that. I do think having analytic data and having the ability to control your own destiny, because if it's zone commercial, frankly, hope is kind of the strategy. You don't have much control if you don't own the land of what goes there. If you are being proactive and you are working to attract specific concepts, and you can hand deliver some of those interested parties to the property owner, which may or may not live here, may or may not care about your vision, then that helps to really get that ball rolling, and it helps you guys to say, this is the community that we want to be, and we want to a certain degree, try to drive those decisions and be proactive in that.
I can see that. Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't know if anyone from the audience wanted to ask a question, you could do that. Good.
Sorry for being late, but just, you already have all this data that you're trying to sell? Or
Yeah, we're the
you're
buyers of
collecting
that
from
data.
you?
Yeah, we're buying Axiom, InfoUSA, Simmons, Claritas, those major data sources.
And updated every 8 weeks.
Correct. Except for the auto. Except for the auto stuff.
And once you've done the full analysis on the community, and a national retailer comes to you and say, what communities do you have that fits my profile?
That's part of it.
You're going
Yeah,
to
for
say,
accommodating
this one?
service, yeah.
I see, so it's a.
Speed dating.
I will say for all of you,
Like any
you're
tool.
not a name to us, you're like an AO1 or an HO3, and that's how the market is segmented. So for private sector, public sector, no matter what it looks like, it's a market segment, and what we're looking for is core customers that look just like X customer. So it's, to a retailer, it's not a personal thing. They're just looking for, do I have enough people that look like my best customer to do that real estate decision?
So
And this
when
is
a
what they're
community-
using, so.
So when a community uses that data to enhance a particular segment of the market, the national
Right.
retailer can go, oh, I like that, I want some.
Or
of that."
regional or unique, yep.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Yes, sir.
Does, once you identify like an attractive business, and I'll use like Chipotle as an example or something, does your analysis, certainly might identify that Chipotle might want to come here, but does it go as far as to look at Chipotle's impact on other existing businesses as
Yeah,
well?
we do an impact analysis, and there's a ripple effect there. And there's also things like, you might have the best and enough of Chipotle's customer, but they may not want to be here anyway if you don't offer an incentive, or if you don't have the right co-tenant. So maybe they want to be next to your Safeway, and there's not available land there. So a lot of stars have to align for something like that to occur, which is the reason that it's so competitive, and the reason that 350 of my clients that is here are using analytic data, because they don't want to get passed by, and they want to increase their sales tax, which also goes back into your city services.
Right. What about its impact on other existing similar businesses?
We do an impact analysis for
That's part
that,
of
so
it.
there'll be a ripple effect.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna get a kind of a options.
You'll
of
get a
how many-
proposal from me.
Yeah,
Yep,
great.
and we can move forward
And
from
then we
there.
will take a look at it later.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of close. I wanted to thank Lisa. When we did goal setting in May, the council talked about wanting to do economic development. However, when various people are asked about economic development, either from the chamber or on this council, there are many different answers as to what economic development is. So the reason I thought it would be great for Lisa to come is sort of give an example of a type of economic development that is out there. These is resources that are out there. I'm not necessarily promoting or whatnot. I just sort of wanted to expose folks to what's out there, and whether that interests you or not, that is purely up to council. But it's just sort of interesting that for us, because when I originally talked to you, I didn't think that a company like this really dealt with cities of this size. But you told me that that was not true, and that you did have cities of this size. So I just thought it would be interesting for her to come and just give us a sample of what this kind of company does, and I just think it's enormously useful for us just to understand what's out there. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next item on our agenda is to authorize a letter thanking the North Coast Railroad Authority for their support on the City of Willits Trail Project. And the agenda packet had a sample letter in it, and Ms. Stephanie, why don't you introduce us?
Yes, Mr. Hal Wagonet came to my office late last week and asked for a letter regarding thanking the North Coast Railroad Authority for their assistance in our Rails to Trails grant project. We, as you know, we have a grant out there to two different agencies for Rails to Trails, or Rails with Trails. NCRA was kind enough to write us some very nice letters supporting that grant. So that, and I said that we would certainly, I would put a letter in the council agenda regarding thanking the agency for their support on our trail, and I've presented that to you for your consideration.
So let's open it up to the public to speak to us, and I think Hal Wagonet is ready to speak to it. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Hal Wagonet. I'm the chairman of the North Coast Railroad Authority. Parenthetically, though, on your last item, although your jurisdiction is the city of Willits and the population is approximately 4,500, 5,000 people, your greater trading area is around 12,000. And you draw from a much larger area. So the decisions that you make here about economic development are really a little bit broader. You need to think in terms of your sphere of influence when you make those. But I'm not going to go too far into that because it's a long conversation. I did ask your city manager to place a letter on the agenda. We discussed some of the items that might be in it. But the purpose of this, and I just want to frame this correctly, is the North Coast Railroad Authority is responsible for the rail corridor 314 miles from Napa to Eureka. The state gave us that responsibility when they created us some 25 years ago for the benefit of the people of the state of California. They also didn't give us any money to do that. And that's been a bone of contention for quite some time. And periodically people would come to the Railroad Authority and seek to add trails as a transportation feature, which at first was not very well received. But as time went by, we began to understand there are some real benefits to that. And the North Coast Railroad Authority has successfully partnered with the city of Healdsburg, the town of Willits. I just have signed a couple of letters, one to the Natural Resource Agency and one to the Caltrans agency in support of your trails projects. There are 2 trails in the Ukiah area, and there are about 3 of them in the Eureka and Arcata area, which are quite a significant feature in that particular area. So I felt that having asked for a little bit of support, having given some support in those directions, and the mission of the North Coast Railroad Authority had been recently changed by SB 1029, sponsored by Senator McGuire, that it would be a good idea to just sort of speak to you in a friendly fashion and kind of clear the air in one regard. There are people that seem to think that the railroad is hostile to trails, but the opposite is true. Whenever an organization comes to us that's bona fide, has a plan and a budget, we welcome them, we embrace them, we don't charge anything for it as some railroads do, because we think this is actually a good idea. It's a partnership idea. So, having signed those letters and Dusty Dooley being absent on those particular days, our new city manager got quite an education as I basically asked for some reciprocal comments. All we want to do is build a little file of these things that says to those who come to us, this is how we handle things, and these are not in our words, but in your words, how it works. So thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. So anybody else in the public would like to address this item? And how about any council members want to, any questions? Yes, Jerry?
Hal, kind of a question for you. Do you see, once, obviously the Great Trail is one aspect of this, do you see NCRA basically getting chopped up and fading on this? Or, I mean, I know we're only asking for our trail area in town and obviously connecting up with the Great Trail heading north, and that's our greater vision, but I'm just curious on the railroad side. I mean, I look and I see heading north, there's probably lots of miles of track that got washed into the Eel that I've heard, and the tunnel that's still closed up there, right? So
You have heard. The railroad was built essentially by hand labor in approximately 1906. In 1964, a 1,000-year flood came through and scoured the area from here north. Some of us were here at that time. In 1996 and 97, we had a El Nino event, which just came in like a freight train, just south of here and washed out all the rails to the south. So Mother Nature has a lot to do with how the railroad functions. As far as politically and from a business standpoint, the SB 1029 seeks to maintain rail services where it currently exists, primarily in the southern part, and it's sort of a moving target whether you start at Cloverdale or Ukiah or Willits, but anyway, to the north, fully half of that area of the 300 miles, to turn that into a trail. Now, there are a lot of interesting features about a trail nowadays, as you may well know. You'd have to have some services that go along with a trail. It has to be accessible. You have to be able to deal with somebody who's out of water or gets stung by bees or gets poison oak or falls over the cliff. You have property owners that are not that pleased with the idea that people would be hiking and camping in close proximity to their areas, which are, if you're just operating a train, the train goes through, but if people are walking and hiking, it's a different story. So how that works out, the state of California is taking that on themselves to do that. And you can say we're being chopped up. We're essentially, there is a target date to transfer all the assets of the authority to a successor agency in about June of 2020. And studies are supposed to be undertaken before that say how that gets done. And once again, no money has been allocated yet to do any of this stuff. But the state has the possibility of doing it. And I've heard in campaign speeches, I've heard Councilman Stransky speak in support of such things, and I know there's others here that feel the same way. So, transportation is transportation, but the main thing, and I want to underscore this, is that the corridor as a whole is of great benefit to the state of California, no matter how it's used. It's very often you find high-speed internet. The fiber is placed along railroad tracks, and there's talk of oftentimes you have water transport systems in there. And lately there's a lot of talk about using, now this may sound futuristic, but using drones to deliver packages. And they don't necessarily want those flying over highways. It's very likely that the railroad would become a drone corridor. And I don't know how that's going to be shared or looked at by the people who want to be trailing along in there. But these are the thing is to keep the corridor intact. This is an important feature. Once fragmented, it can't be put back together again. As we all know from our forest management around here, once you cut the trees off and whack it up into 40-acre parcels, you don't have a forest to manage anymore. You have a lot of little holdings. Very difficult to coordinate. So, to answer your question, there is a target date to bring this chapter of the railroad to a close, and we'll have to see how the state goes about getting it there. We're being cooperative, and we think the trail deal is a wonderful thing. There's some folks that think that the NCRA is now going to suddenly put in a new trail, put in this Great Redwood Trail. That's not the case. The state is going to put in the Great Redwood Trail on its own dime and on its own timetable. And we have our own trails, and if you came to us today with another trail project, we would handle it just as we have. We're not going to go out and do the state's work for them and then have them come in later and undo it. So,
Any other?
I can answer lots of questions that haven't been asked here, so I think we should probably
Okay.
move on.
Any other council members? The one thing I wanted to suggest in the second paragraph of the letter, where it says "the trail will provide," I think it might be good to say the Willits, the proposed Willits Trail or something, just so it's clear that we're not there referring to the Great Redwood Trail. That was the only thing I just wanted to make it clear. And otherwise, should we have a motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve the letter as amended by Mayor Strong.
And
I'll second the motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. I don't believe we need to have a roll call vote on this, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your support on our
Thank
trail.
you, thank you.
Great. Next is a discussion and consideration of endorsing Measure J on the November ballot. And did you want to introduce that, or should we have Chris come in?
I can go ahead and talk briefly, and we'd love to have Chris at the podium.
I'll come up and speak.
Okay, that's great. Measure J, of course, is a measure on the November ballot, and Chris Wilkes, our fire chief of the Little Lake Fire District, is here to talk about Measure J, and we hear for your consideration is an endorsement of Measure J.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Chris Wilkes. I'm the fire chief for the Little Lake Fire District, which is our fire department here locally. I thank you for your support of Measure J. We're at a critical point with our firehouse here in Willits, and I'll discuss it a little bit more as we come a little closer to the November election.
We're pretty close.
Pretty close, pretty close. Emergency services is all about preparation and readiness. The new firehouse project is nothing new. It's been around for a long time. It's not something we've dreamed up in the last couple of years. We'll go back to 1952 when the building they were in was built. It provided for service that 1952 required. 50 emergency services calls a year, 50 fire calls a year. They were able to fit their apparatus in the structure at the time and provide the services that this community needed out of that building at that time. As we move forward throughout the years, in 1988, we built the substation that's on Bechtel Road. Not because we needed more space, but it provided for more service. We bought a ladder truck. We have, not at that time, but down the road we bought one. They made space for that ladder truck because the community needed it. Engines were getting bigger, call volumes were going up, the types of calls that we were going to were changing. And so to provide service to both ends of our community and both sides of our district, we built a substation, Station 541, the one on Bechtel Road. That was in 1988, 30 years ago. Since that time, there was Chief Smith and his staff and boards, they started building in the 90s conceptual drawings of what we wanted or needed for a firehouse at the time. Not just because we wanted one, but services started calling for it. The building that was built in 1952 started failing. Again, engines started getting bigger. Those of you that are around, there used to only be 2 bays in the front of the firehouse on Commercial Street, and they were able to transform the front of the building a little bit and make it to where it had 3 bays to service that a little bit better. In other words, if you needed a 3rd engine out of this station before, you had to pull one out, back the other one around a pillar and bring it out, and that was not efficient any longer. So in 2002, we passed a special tax, and that special tax had room to grow. And in 2007, we moved that special tax to its maximum. The reason for moving that special tax for fire department operations in 2007 was to start saving for this new structure. Okay, it was to start providing for services in the future. The outlook was always there. We always knew that it needed to happen. And our boards and staff were very fiscally sound over those years and saved the money that we said that we were going to save. And I'll go into that a little bit more. In 2013, actually in 2009, we tried to get a shovel-ready project together in order to go out for a grant that was available at the time. And that was the last grant that we are aware of through FEMA for infrastructure, and we failed to get that grant in 2009. But we knew we needed to move forward with the firehouse project. In 2013, we tried for what was Measure I at the time, and it failed by 94 votes. This was a big eye-opener for us. We had a building that needed to be replaced at that time. It was going to cost roughly $3.1 million. We had saved money in the process since 2007 towards that project, and it failed. But we knew that we couldn't stop. So since 2013, our boards and staff have kept saving money since then, but by no means could we keep up with almost $500,000 a year worth of inflation when you're saving $100,000 a year. The math is really pretty simple. Here we are now in a building that doesn't meet our needs. It doesn't meet ADA requirements. It is failing us mechanically and structurally. But I'm confident this year. We've made a big push. I think our community sees the need. Certainly we're having this discussion with council today. So I think that folks understand where we're at and what's needed to move forward. As of today, we're sitting at roughly 550 calls for service. Remember in 1952 when we were working out of this building, we were right around 50 calls a year. There's been talk about the census going down for population, and we've had a lot of emails and talks with the public. But the reality is our call volume is going up all the time. We serve, not just the city of Willits, we serve roughly 42 miles of state highway. We've had different infrastructure changes around here that have affected the way we respond. We have a bypass. There's only 2 ways to get on that bypass, at the north and the south. So for us to stay in a state of preparedness and to keep our response times down, our mutual aid responsibility to our neighbors and brook trails at the best possible way we can, to keep our apparatus that's built for commercial structural firefighting, ladder trucks, our best Type 1 engine, those are right now housed at Station 541 on Bechtel Road. They need to be in City Central. They need to be in a new fire station on Commercial Street. And we can respond to those bypasses on both ends of town. The only way to do that is with the passage of Measure J and to build this firehouse. I'm here to say that if Measure J doesn't pass for some reason, which I'm confident that it will, there will not be a firehouse on Commercial Street. It will not be here or available. Your volunteers will be traveling through town. The volunteers won't give up. They're strong. We have a very strong corps. They'll respond through town, but as you can tell, response times will plummet. If Brook Trails has a call for service for a Type 1 engine for a structure fire, everybody's going to have to respond to that end and come back through our town for traffic and stoplights and everything else along the way in order to make it up the hill. So much so that we didn't get a letter of support from Brook Trails in 2013, but they had no problem writing a letter of support over this issue in 2018. their response levels are going up, their call volumes are going up, and we provide a lot of service up in that area. I'm very proud of our board. I'm very proud of our staff, our political action committee. I think we've made as strong of a push as we possibly can this year in order to make this measure happen. The media has been fantastic. The newspapers have been a part of it. They've helped us out tremendously. I think we've had good word of mouth, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to be on the right track. You know, our biggest struggle is letting people know in the public that the money that they spend on Measure J is staying right here. It's tangible. You put the money in, you're going to see a building. It doesn't go into some general fund. It's not used on wages and benefits. It's going to go directly towards the debt reduction of a new firehouse. And in order for us to keep the level of service, the level of preparedness that we all know and enjoy as a community, this firehouse project has to happen. I think it will. And I wanted to thank you guys for your support and recognition of Measure J.
Thank you, Chris. So comments and questions? I see, yes.
Thank you, Chris. I think it goes without question that we support the need for the new firehouse. Always have, speaking for myself at least. But part of the exercise tonight is to convince the voters to vote for this thing. So the most impactful thing about the measure is how much it's going to cost individuals.
Of course.
And I'm reading in here in your resolution, or I guess the proclamation, the special tax would not exceed $39 per unit.
Correct.
Could you expand on that and what does it mean to people?
Our special tax is a per unit tax. By ordinance, it's a formula by ordinance, and it is written out in everybody's sample ballot to see. The basic way to put it, if it's a non-commercial business and it's a residence, a blank parcel is 1 unit's worth of fire protection. That's $39. If you put a house, a residence on that, that's another unit of fire protection. So a normal residence would be 2 units, it would be $78 annually. Commercial businesses are also in that ordinance, but they're spelled out in the formula. Like as an example, if you had a service shop, it may be 3 units, or a grocery store maybe 5 units. A big manufacturing business could be as much as 10 units annually. Those are a little harder to explain, other than we've tried to ask the public to call us, come in and see us, and we can go over your tax bill. I can pull it up and we can give you direct numbers.
So bottom line, it's not a big deal. I would not call this a burden on the average citizen.
Our political action consultant said that in the past 4 years of him doing political action and putting bonds on ballots, this is the cheapest bond measure that he has put on a ballot. Our board is very conservative. We fought long and hard about how much we should charge per unit, and they were adamant the whole time, the minimum amount to impact our taxpayers, and that's what we've done. We have to work with bond counsel to make sure that we can reduce the debt appropriately, that the amount of money that we're going to charge per unit will get the job done, and we've met that, and we've tried to do everything we can to meet those bare minimums.
So again, to beat this thing completely to death, because I think voters really need to get a visual of what they're buying into. Could you characterize for a typical homeowner, he or she is going to spend less than $100 a year, and you had alluded to the fact that if this bond measure does not pass, that facility across the street is going to disappear.
Absolutely.
So can you kind of characterize for this less than $100 a year investment, what will the people get and what will they avoid? Is that?
If they do pay for, if
they don't pass this thing, I mean, the trade-off is on one hand, they're going to have a bill of less than $100 a year. On the other hand, they're going to have what?
They're gonna have lower response times, less available fire engines. Until people have an emergency at themselves, they don't recognize the benefit of somebody being there within minutes. And that is going to change drastically. Although we can drive code 3 through town, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time, and it doesn't just take time one way. It takes time both ways. We have volunteers that respond to this end and volunteers that respond to that end. Those same folks are going to have to make the trip through town in order to make the trip back through town.
Thank you.
Jerry?
First of all, I've come out in support of this, and Chris, maybe for the sake of the folks in the audience and out there in television land, the correlation between response time and, I guess, lives lost or saved, and then also how the lack of this firehouse here, if we have to close it and find alternatives and maybe our response times drop, how that might affect fire insurance ratings.
Absolutely. I'm going to use what we call echo responses in our world. That'd be a call for CPR. Okay, it's a call where somebody's basically dying to the point that you need CPR. Minutes mean everything to somebody in that case if it's a loved one. We get dispatched automatically to all echo responses. It's the easiest way for me to understand that. If somebody could be there, most CPR calls, if it's witnessed, your chances of survival go up dramatically. I don't have the percentages in front of me. But every minute that you go down in response time, the odds of survival exponentially fall. And so not having apparatus on this side slows that process down completely. And so that would be on the medical side, the chances and changes or differences. Fire sweeping through homes. Everybody's seen in wind-driven fires how quickly they move. Structure fires, how quickly they move through homes. Minutes actually make differences. In some big fire departments, municipal fire departments, they have to have guaranteed response times. You know, when folks pay the money, they want a guaranteed response time. Of course, we run a volunteer fire department, so we have to get people there in order to get the job done. But response times mean everything to the public. ISO rating, that's what you're speaking of for insurance services. We're very fortunate in this community, and this is also a boon to the city as well, because it's a coordination between the fire department and the water service. We're what they call a 3, and then the 3Y in the urban area. But in the city limits, we're considered a 3 as far as our insurance services office's rating. That's unheard of. That's very, very rare for a volunteer fire department to meet those standards. To the point that we can't become a 2 without full-time paid staffing. So the first step to ever get there, it's not in our 5-year plan to have full-time paid staffing of firefighters or anything of that nature, but if we ever want to move that forward, we have to have full-time paid staffing in a building that can support that. Now, if you're not within a radius of your ISO rating and you can't supply the service, insurance services, especially to commercial business, mostly impacting commercial business, as that 3 starts to become a 4 or a 5, insurance premiums go up. And that's how that works.
Yeah, Larry?
I would like to make a motion to the recommended action.
I'll second.
And we haven't opened the hearing yet, but would anyone in the audience like to speak to this endorsement of Measure J? I wanted to I just did the math, that if it's $78 per year for a typical residence, or for any residence, I guess, it's $6.50 a month. The cost of replacing your house, the cost of your insurance, not to mention your lives, that's really not very much money.
That's pretty cheap insurance.
$6.50 a month. And the fire department is our lifeline. It is absolutely essential to this community. And as global climate change affects us, it's going to be even more important that we have the readiness and the ability to respond to these crises. And we know that we need it. So, and for those of you who, I think Chris has updated us here quite often, but the fire station as it is now, they can barely get the fire truck in and out of those bays. You know, there's like maybe 2-inch clearance. Very, very unworkable, and it's absolutely imperative that we support Measure J And a 2/3 vote is a high standard. But for $6.50 a month, my God. Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know
That's okay.
that you.
That's okay. I just want to thank Chief Wilkes and then also the volunteer firefighters. I think it's important, like you've mentioned, about the volunteers. The services are provided on the backs of volunteers who give up their income, their time, their many, many things. And to not at least offer a firehouse that's safe and appropriate, gosh, that just seems like a slap in the face to those folks who show up at our door to rescue us. And I myself have had the opportunity to have the fire department arrive very quickly in a time of crisis, and most recently on Highway 20, the fire department responded to an incident, and I thought seconds, minutes worth difference between the property and the home going up. And that's $6.50 or $78, even if you ask me for $500 or $1,000, what is that in comparison to what you would lose if you didn't have those services? And I want Commercial Street, and I want to show my appreciation to those men and women that are going out there and giving all that they give every day, that we do value our fire department. We can't just talk about it. We gotta walk, put our money where our mouth is, and show the fire department that we value all that they do. And this is not much to ask, and so thank you.
Okay, we should, I guess, we should have a roll call.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Ornstein.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Mayor Strong.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chris.
Good luck, Chris.
Yeah.
I already
Thank you,
voted.
Chris.
Urge, Okay. So now we are on, there's no ordinance to enact this evening, and the consent calendar includes the October 10th minutes and a approval of a city manager to execute a supplement to R76 to state project, boy, what a number, regarding SB1 local partnership program. It was kind of a lot of alphabet soup there. I wonder if you could take just a minute to turn that into a very quick statement, just so we know what we're voting on.
Sure, Andrea is
Oh,
here to
Andrea's
give
gonna
that
do it.
report.
Okay, great. Even though this is consent calendar, I think it's worth knowing what we're doing.
So, I'm Andrea Trincato, project manager for the engineering department. And this is a resolution to give the city manager authorization to execute program documents for the implementation of the local partnership program. And this is SB1 money to improve our roads. So annually, they'll be giving us $100,000 if we choose to participate in this program. And our project that we are planning to do for this upcoming year is a pavement preservation project. And basically, what we do there is we're preserving pavement that's considered in good condition, and it's just starting to show signs of deterioration. So we're extending its useful life. And with this year's project, which we're nearing the completion on the plans and specs, we believe we'll get the majority of the streets considered in good condition in the town. So.
And there's $124,000 match from our half cent sales tax.
There is, and it's budgeted in this year's fiscal year budget.
Okay, so that's an explanation of that item. I had a couple questions on the minutes. Okay, those are done. So are there any comments from the public on these two consent calendar items? And if not,
And I'll move.
I second.
okay, we've got a motion and a second, and no questions, I guess, here. So let's have a roll call vote.
Yes. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Stransky.
Yes.
Ornstein.
Yeah.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Mayor Strong.
Yes. All right. Informational reports are in the packet, if there were any. I don't know. right to appeal if you're upset with anything we've acted on. You can appeal in the courts. Commissions, agencies, authorities. Now, my understanding of the way the agenda is now, those of us who are on, let me make sure I've got this right.
That's
Okay.
number 11.
Yeah, okay, all right, so what does come under other? Oh, that's if we're planning commission, okay. If everything's changing a bit. Okay, so we don't have a planning commission item. City manager report.
I just have a couple things. We had a employee quarterly meeting last Friday, and where we congratulated our shining star of the quarter. And the shining star this quarter was Corey Unangst, and I hope I pronounced his name right. And he got a number of nominations, and so I wanted to just publicly congratulate him for that honor. The only other issue I wanted to bring up is trying to start regular meetings with Assemblyperson Wood's office, but they are coming tomorrow to discuss some Caltrans issues of interest to us. So they've been very responsive, and we appreciate that. And that's pretty much all I have, because we have some staff here that would like to give their own reports later on in the presentation, so I'm going to let them do that.
I would just like to say publicly how much I appreciate the monthly or the monthly reports or bi-weekly that we get from the city manager. And it would probably be great if the public could see it. I mean, we get these reports verbally at every council meeting, but sometimes it's late and, some of the words get missed. So it's really great to read that, and it's exciting to see how much stuff you guys are doing.
And so as an experiment, I sent actually a copy of the newsletter to the Willits Weekly, the Willits News, so that they could take a look, and I got some favorable responses, and from that they're going to be following up.
Good. Good.
With getting some information out to the public. And okay, did you get it?
I think I want to mention that we are due to do a review of our new city manager, and so just to plan ahead that at our November 14th, whatever that first meeting in November is, plan to come early, and we will hear from staff, and we will meet with Stephanie and go over a performance review of our new city manager. So,
Not so new anymore. Not so new anymore.
Speaking of which, our second meeting in November, can you remind me?
We don't have one.
That's what I thought, just confirming. I'll be on vacation.
We only have one meeting in November and one meeting in December.
Okay, that's what I heard.
And what I also hope to have on the November agenda is approval of our labor agreements. We're hoping that is coming November, so just to let you know.
All right, so the other department recommendations. So, Jim, do you have anything on legal?
No, I don't.
Okay, Kathy, anything?
Nothing on CD, thank you.
Any other, Karen, do you have any?
Nothing for tonight.
Okay, so I think.
I'll bet they do.
But these other people
I'll bet
do.
they do.
Yes, I'm getting there. I'm just going through this so I don't forget something. Public
Building up
safety.
the tension, right?
Public safety, bring Scott Warnock up. Update. Get there.
This is going to be pretty brief. To date, before I walked over here, this year we've received 10,150 calls for service, which averages 34 calls a day. These last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of days where there's almost 60 calls for service, and we've had to stack the calls, and some people have been upset about it, but we have to triage the calls to, deal with life and limb before we deal with property. A couple of the days, we actually called extra people in to try to get the calls, and I'm actually taking calls now too. let's see, on October 16th, the Traffic Safety Committee met. That consists of Public Works, Engineering, Community Development, and the Police Department. We had input from each of those departments as well as outside agencies and the public, and that includes City Council as the public. We discussed 21 different items, anything from additions of stop signs, bus stops, red zones, speeding problems, etc., and possible solutions to those. So everybody on the committee has assignments to research before we bring it before the council. On the November 14th council meeting, I'm going to have an agenda item that has those things on it for the council to decide if they want us to go forward with resolutions or other action. A lot of these things were already taken care of without recommendation, like extra patrol for speeders, things like that. We don't have to bring that before you. So that's it. Any questions about the Traffic Safety Committee meeting?
Questions?
We had a lot of good public input, and I think I mentioned that last time. But we actually discussed some really good ideas that we didn't even think of.
Yeah.
Really good safety things.
How many people attended?
It wasn't a public meeting.
But just
Staff. This is a-
staff.
Staff. We have 5 of us.
Okay. I was
But
just-
you said it was open to the public to participate?
No, it was not
oh,
open
it
to
is
the
not.
public.
The comments that have come.
Yeah,
in.
so what I did is I put it on our Facebook page that I am encouraging and welcoming, and I got a lot of response and it was all good. There was nothing
Okay.
negative.
Yeah, we've heard a couple of things here, and I know you took notes on that too, so yeah, we're brought up at public comment. Yeah, okay,
All right, thank you.
great. Okay, and so we heard from Chris earlier, and I think we're up to date on that. Community development. Would you like to?
Dusty Dooley, Community Development Director. Happy birthday, Miss Aaliyah Dooley, 6 years old today. And also, great start to the meeting, and I'm really glad that Ms. Plaza is feeling better. Saying that, just briefly, there's hopefully some information in the city manager's report on what the community development department is doing to stay busy in part. Wanted to give you just a quick heads up on something else that we're working on. There's Senate Bill 743. The state is directing local jurisdictions to change the way that they analyze transportation impacts under CEQA review. And we go from looking at level of service to vehicle miles traveled. So now when we analyze a project, we've got the Bechtel Road Main Street intersection, and we've got a new hospital going down East Hill Road. We're going to analyze the traffic levels and how that's going to impact the level of service for those various intersections. And that's how you get to stuff where Costco now requires a new stoplight or a new extended turn lane, etc. What the state is directing us to do is, rather than looking at level of service, to look at vehicle miles traveled. And this is in response to the desire to limit the amount of greenhouse gases that we create. So for instance, a project that's a subdivision 5 acres out of town that's well away from any type of commercial services, when we analyze that project, it's going to have considerably more vehicle miles traveled than an infill project that's right next to a Safeway and a school, okay? What we have to do is determine a threshold of significance, meaning when we go under CEQA, at what point do we become a significant impact? You know, where is that line at? And then what's the methodology for determining a project's estimated vehicle miles traveled? At the MCOG TAC group, we decided that we're going to work with Caltrans and MCOG taking the lead to go after a grant. Every jurisdiction, and as well as the county, so the cities in the county are going to get together. Should we get the grant, we should probably do it even if we don't, but try to work together to establish these thresholds and the methodology for individual jurisdiction. So it's going to be really important, I think, for the jurisdictions to pick one methodology so that when we're analyzing vehicle miles trips that are likely going to involve traveling through the county as well as the city, if we have the same model for determining a project's impact, that's going to make life easier for everybody. And then also we can work together to establish individual thresholds of significance for each of our jurisdictions. They may be the same, they may be a little bit different, just because county and cities is a little bit apples and oranges. But Caltrans is going to assist us to get grant funding to go through that exercise. So that needs to be done by July 2020. So just something to start wrapping your mind around, and something that you are going to see on some CEQA documents moving into the future. So I wanted to share that with you. And that's all I had.
Did you want to update council on the general plan update or anything regarding Main Street corridor plan?
The Revite Ed's coming up later. I could tackle that now if you like. Revite Ed met on Tuesday. The main topic of discussion was an update on the implementation of the Willits Main Street Corridor Enhancement Plan. It was a productive meeting. I think there were some good conversations that occurred. We were able, there was a report that was presented to Revite Ed. That report will be updated, and we'll be gathering some other information to share with the council in an upcoming meeting, possibly December. And what it covered was a number of the improvements that are identified in the plan. So there's a lot of beautification efforts like street trees and street lights, and then a number of pedestrian safety improvements as well, such as bulb outs, enhanced crosswalks. We explained some of the decisions that still need to be made. We went over some timelines as to when you can expect those improvements to occur. We identified some improvements that require us to identify funding, and sort of spoke to timelines and sense of what can occur before relinquishment of Main Street back to the city, and what improvements there may be an advantage to start working on, or not start working on, but implement after the relinquishment of Main Street. Caltrans may be interested in doing a partial relinquishment of Main Street. The city may be interested in waiting for a winter to go by to see how the improvements handle a winter before taking back Main Street. The Sherwood project is one of the three main components of the overall relinquishment project, along with Main Street itself and the high school sidewalk project that was essentially completed. The Sherwood project is slated to be done in the summer of next year. Understanding that our engineering staff, it takes a good 4 or 5 months to develop a project before construction. A lot of the bulb outs, enhanced crosswalks, a lot of that stuff likely wouldn't occur until the spring of 2020. Whereas some of the street trees, street lights, we want to put in some decorative pavers where you see the planter strips now, and some of that could occur as soon as funding is developed. Yeah, so it was nice to have that update written down. I've already had a few folks that were not quite understanding where the process was, past efforts that had already been completed. You were very curious as to when these improvements could be expected to be completed, and it's nice to be able to now steer them in the direction of a staff report. Yeah.
I'm seeing some hands. Go, Jerry.
I think we also discussed the possibility of having the Main Street plan electronically put on when we have our website up, so that I guess we had some interest in kind of a reminder to folks.
Yeah, we thank you for reminding me that. We used to have it online when we kind of came to our temporary website. I failed to get it on there, and we'll get it on there as soon as possible, which shouldn't take long at all. And then, of course, it's already planned for the new website. There's also a copy available down at the library for you to go look at. And certainly if you want to come by the Community Development Department, we have a copy available that I don't want to give my one copy out, but I'm happy to share it with folks. And if anyone in the council doesn't have a copy yet, you guys should. And so if I failed to give you one in the past, let me know, and we'll either print a nice one out that's, yeah.
Ron, did you have?
Yeah, I've noticed with the sidewalk construction and the street paving, after the work is done, it's inspected, I assume by the contractor and by Caltrans. Do we have any of our own people who are inspecting as well?
Yeah, we do, and a big shout out to our engineering department, Jeremy Ronco, Andrea Trincato, Suzanne Lotus, and then Rod Wilburn. So you may have remembered with the sidewalk work, and actually Bill Wilson too. Bill has been working feverishly with them to get the water line specifically up and running, and has been doing a ton of coordination work with Caltrans, probably more than any of us. Regarding the sidewalk specifically, after that work was initially completed, our folks went and looked at it and had a whole punch list of improvements to be completed. And when we approached Caltrans with them, it's like, oh yeah, okay, we'll work on it. And then we immediately went into talking about what the appropriate solutions were to fix that. And so you may have noticed that Caltrans has gone back and done some minor tweaking of some of those improvements after their initial construction. So definitely there's...
So we do have effective input on what we're gonna wind up owning.
Yeah, there's a check and balance there, yeah.
Good.
So on that subject, I just wanted to say, I think it would be good, well, the sooner the better that the whole council and the public get an update on sort of what our schedule is for the improvements that the city's gonna be responsible for. And I know it's gonna be a moving target, it depends on the funding and all that, but I think we're due for sort of a little more public communication about that.
Yeah.
So if the report that you've given to the Levite Ed can be scheduled at a council meeting and or a public forum, I think it would be real helpful.
Yeah, and I think the plan now is to try to do that in December. But I'll say one of the important things that we were hoping to get from Caltrans that's really going to allow us to give you some better information in December is grabbing those as-built plans that we, and that's going to help us get some better concrete estimates as to what some of these improvements might cost you, like specifically the pavers and whatnot. But
Jerry?
I think the other thing we talked about at the meeting that I think Dusty's cognizant of, and Jeremy, that for that meeting we have here, that they'll have some bigger maps so that we can display that. Yes, because at the Revite Ed meeting, we had some small things. So
right,
there's some conceptual drawings that are, you know, I don't know that staff has the ability to create 3D renderings and all that kind of stuff, but or maybe we do, but we would need to buy some programs, train ourselves, and spend some time on it. But there's some of that a lot of that information is actually in the plan that we can pull out and sort of re-present or remind the community and the council of those past efforts.
And engineering has a big printer.
I have a copy, and it is not easy to read or understand.
It has to be in color.
It's hard for me. So
the other question that is the schedule or whatever the status of the general plan, contracting out to get work on the general plan. Is there anything new to report?
There is no major update other than mainly myself has been trying to figure out the best strategy on how to move forward with this process. And by that I mean scoping the project so that it provides it's the most cost-effective and implementation effective way of going about that work.
Kind of to draw up an RFP that will be meaningful and cost-effective.
So is it a full entire general plan update? Or are we really more focused on just updating the land use element and maybe a couple other sections? You know, what's the proper order of things? Do I seek community input before I actually even send out an RFP? So I'm talking to a lot of other community development directors and consultants that have done this process and learning from their successes as well as, more importantly, some of their mistakes. And I'm So,
Yeah.
yes, I don't have any concrete information to share with you other than that it's been something that I probably need to figure out how to stop thinking about more than I do. Yeah.
Okay, all right. How about our building inspection? Do we have a report from a new staff person? Welcome again.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Christopher Morgan, I'm the new building official, and I was sitting there thinking you guys might want to hear from me. I've been here 1 month. I'm settling in quite nicely. Building activity-wise, we got a lot going on right now. I'm covered up with inspections on the daily, in the morning and the afternoon. So there's a lot going on. I would like to compliment the contractors and engineers that I've worked with so far. I've been really impressed. My expectations of what I was going to find have been exceeded. So we really got a good group of contractors that I've met so far. And we've got some pretty intelligent owner builders as well. They just need a little bit of coaching, but for the most part, they're doing quite well also. And we're going to have a pretty hefty a month for evaluation in the next activity report. It's looking quite well. Way better than last month. So code enforcement wise, I've been meeting with the public. I've been responding to every phone call, which is quite numerous on both sides. But I am happy to report this week, to my knowledge, at least on my phone, there hasn't been a single one. Last week I met with a handful of folks and I think it went quite well. Currently I'm practicing building relationships with contractors and the public. And I think that I've been received quite well, and I think we're going to have a good continued relationship on both sides of that hat. As far as compliance goes, I guess we'll wait and see. And I just want to let you guys know and the public know that I treat everybody with respect and courteousness. Everyone gets the same level of me, no matter who you are. And I just want everyone to know that I've been really impressed so far, and I'm settling quite nicely. I do miss my wife, though.
I hope she's coming soon.
I do too. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Really
Thank
glad
you.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you on board.
Thank you.
And now we're at Public Works. Bill, we're going to hear from you. Yay.
You look so
Rolling of
excited.
eyes. We don't allow that.
Bill Wilson, Public Works Superintendent. It's been 16 years now here, and I got to say thank you to the crews, water, sewer, maintenance, engineering, the lovely ladies in the office. The groups work great together. They have they push hard. There's a lot of good fun out there, but these guys get a lot of work done, and they try to make a good effort to get it done as quickly as possible and timely. So I just want to thank the crews, and that's pretty much it. So, any questions?
Our community fields, whether it's the park or the sports parks, they look great. The grass looks well kept. Thank you.
Kurt's doing a great job out there.
It makes
now
a
that soccer's
difference.
done, we're going to try to get some seeding and aeration done, and right before the rains come in, so
Yeah.
get them set for next year. We got some other plans and some other ideas we'd like to do, so we're moving right along. So.
Well, we had our grass, I think it was 2 years ago, it was a rough year, and this year it absolutely looks beautiful out there. So.
It came out good.
Yeah, thank you.
Bill?
Yes,
Rec Grove, any bad tree issues you need to address this winter?
Well, we're working our way through. I was talking to our arborist / tree cutter or trimmer. We did a third of the back third last year. We're going to move the next third this year. It's all about the money routine, trying to, we try to keep it safe as possible. We go through the park and see what we have, what needs to be done automatically, but then we go the next third, we wanna just really thin out the heavy stuff. The rec road, you know, those trees have been there a long time. So, and it'd be, we really seriously need to start talking about a rotation plan for some of those trees. I know I took a lot of heat for Snyder Park, but that was, had to be done, so. And that park, Kurt's done a great job with that park too. Those trees are healthy, looking good. Another 10 years or 5 years, they're gonna be really beautiful trees.
I appreciate that you're looking at